Yeah, that was President Biden at the White House Easter egg roll yesterday with Al Roker, telling Al Roker that he plans on running in 2024, but he's not prepared to officially announce it right now. A new Washington Post op-ed is warning President Biden about a potential Democrat challenger, writing, quote, Biden can rest assured that his leadership of the Democrat Party is secure, but he should also be praying that no talented progressive decides to test the waters. If that happens, the ripple effects might prove more damaging than he expects. In the Washington Post yesterday. Joining me now is the Washington Examiner editor-in-chief, Hugo Gurdon. Hugo, what is that? A call for a progressive to come on out against Biden? What do you think that was in that op-ed in the Washington Post?
Very interesting. You know, it must be going on a year now. The Democrats have been. Some Democrats have been talking about Biden as being too old, etc. He served his purpose. He beat Donald Trump in the last election. But they don't really want him to be, the majority don't want him to be running again for the presidency. He's clearly running again, and he's having the best of both worlds by running but not having a formal announcement. And that actually wards off some of the progressives. There are people like Gavin Newsom who look like they're running for president. You see him in ads, and he talks as though he's running for president, but clearly they can't break out into an actual campaign when the president hasn't announced that he's running again. It's a very strange sort of limbo that the president is taking advantage of. No one doubts he's running again. He says he's running again, but he hasn't made a formal announcement. And the party itself is very worried that he's simply too old. He will be running again at 82 years old. If he gets a second term, he'll be 86 years old before the second term ends. That's considerably older than the average white man lives or has life expectancy in the United States. Presidents have died in office before. This president stumbles rhetorically and stumbles physically. He shows clear signs of age, and his own party is very concerned. The one advantage that they have is that, and this is why they are trying to stoke up former President Trump to run against him, is that at the moment, former President Trump, is the strongest of the declared candidates and is leading the other candidates in the polls, and he's the one person that the Democrats know that President Biden is able to beat. That's why they want to run against him again.
You think so? The House Judiciary Committee is sending a subpoena, meanwhile, to FBI Director Christopher Wray, saying that they've got documents that show that the FBI wanted sources within the Catholic churches to battle what they called domestic terrorism. Chairman Jim Jordan writes this: the FBI proposed that its agents develop sources among the clergy and church leadership to inform on Americans practicing their faith, Hugo. I mean, this is getting worse and worse in terms of what the FBI has been up to. How do you read this?
Yeah, this is very concerning, Maria. You know, the FBI's left-wing bias or anti-conservative bias has been very apparent for many, many years, going back at least until to Peter Strzok's emails about keeping President Trump out of the White House, right through things like its lack of interest in Hunter Biden's shady business dealings and whether they're connected to the president, and a whole range of different things. To hear that the FBI is recruiting and wanting to keep tabs on organizations as mainstream as the Catholic Church is very concerning. You know, it's been a few years now since the Southern Poverty Law Center identified some Catholic organizations and organizations which were opposed to abortion and active against abortion as hate groups. Increasingly, there are aspects of traditional belief and indeed organizations as big as the Catholic Church, which foster traditional belief on cultural matters that are seen by the left and depicted as the left and smeared by the left as being left-wing and hate groups, etc. And to see that the FBI is perhaps going along with this is extremely concerning and needs to be looked into. And it's a very good thing that the House Republicans are looking into it at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, Kara, jump in here. This is after the administration, including the FBI, called soccer moms domestic terrorists as well.
Exactly, and parents who are just protesting CRT at school board meetings. So this is clearly part of a pattern here. But Hugo, the last time Director Wray was up in front of Congress giving testimony, he said, all right, see you later, I got to go on vacation. Is there any hope for accountability from Director Wray, or does the status quo just persist?
You know, I think that it sounds to me like the Wray is sort of stonewalling. I mean, obviously, Jim Jordan is dissatisfied with the response of the FBI to subpoenas. I think that under this administration and the Justice Department, the FBI, they have a degree of cover, and they're going to stonewall the House the House Republicans as much as they possibly can. You know, it's going to be an uphill battle for Jim Jordan and other concerned Republicans to get to the bottom of the way that the FBI behaves. But it's absolutely necessary for them to continue to try and hold the FBI accountable and to try and let the American people understand how the intelligence services and security services are behaving supposedly in their defense, but increasingly with suspicion against those who hold traditional views, whether it's based on faith or not.
Hugo, it seems that they are trying to come after ordinary Americans over and over again in their narrative coming out of the White House. I mean, all of this in the face of, you know, the evidence of the evidence of business dealings and influence peddling, and yet we don't have any answers on why they attack ordinary Americans.
Yeah, I think that it's sort of intuitive. What's happened is, you know, President Biden ran as a centrist. He was going to be a moderating influence on the left, so he said before he came to power. Since he came to power, he has absolutely not. He's fallen into line. He's done the bidding of the left in all the way through, and that includes on these cultural matters. I mean, he's supposedly a Catholic himself, and yet, you know, he behaves as though abortion were an absolute human right, and it's absolutely wrong for Catholics and other traditional believers to lobby against it. So, you know, yes, an increasing number of ordinary Americans with traditional beliefs are being depicted as hateful. And that is a serious problem with this administration.
Yeah, for sure. Hugo Gurdon, good to see you. Thanks very much.